Democratic presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. First, let's begin with you, Senator. What's your reaction to those Republicans who are now coming out and saying what the president did was wrong, but is not removable?
Well, first of all, I wish I was sitting there right now with you in Iowa, Joe, where I was yesterday, and I'm coming back today. I think you see we are doing incredibly well there and surging right at the end. But I felt it's my constitutional duty to come back, and I believe the people of Iowa understand we're having the closing arguments. And I am sickened by what my Republican colleagues have been saying. I think this is a search for the truth. And regardless of how they voted and will vote on impeachment, I think one of the most critical moments was when we had that 51-49 vote on witnesses. They didn't want to hear the truth. They know exactly what John Bolton's going to say. He put it in his manuscript, which is right out there for people to see. And I don't think we're going to wait 5 years for the truth to come out. It's coming out in 5 days, in 5 weeks. And this is going to be on their shoulders.
Yeah, you know, Katty Kay, it seems that Katty Kay is going to have a question for you, second, Senator. But Katty, it seems that the Republicans could have done this in the very beginning, even in the House, and saved themselves a lot of humiliation by saying, yes, what he did was wrong. Now let's have a rational debate on whether it justifies the removal of a president from office. They would have been on much firmer ground. But these Republicans who were saying it, Lamar Alexander in particular, said what he did was inappropriate, but we don't want to hear the entire story. So John Bolton can't testify.
Yeah, I mean, there's been this whole shift in the Republican argument, initially starting out with he didn't do it. And I think that's the problem, is they started out by saying he didn't do it. Of course, if he had done it, that wouldn't be good. We wouldn't like that. But now, oh, yeah, well, he did do it. We've seen this continuously through the Trump presidency and through the Trump election campaign in 2016, where the goalpost shifts dramatically when members of his party have to realize what they're actually
doing. And who did this more dramatically than Lindsey Graham, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, who said, if there was a quid pro quo, then I'm going to have problems with that. Lindsey found out there was. Everybody's admitting it in the Senate.
But actually, I don't have a problem.
But he says this is instead he calls it a, quote, lynching.
But in a way, perhaps the most surprising or hypocritical is Joni Ernst talking about the corruption issue when it comes to President Trump. This is the president that has suggested that we should overturn American companies not being able to give bribes abroad.
Right.
Corruption is what Donald Trump has been known for during his career, in his business dealings, and potentially in his presidency too. And yet we're saying that, well, he actually holds corruption very importantly and thinks that's a very serious issue.
And remember, Senator Ernst is also the one last week who ran out to the cameras, as Casey knows, and said, I wonder how this is going to play in Iowa. All this talk about Joe Biden and Burisma clearly giving away the political game. Senator Klobuchar, I'm curious to know, as you listen to closing arguments and then the full Senate votes on the question of impeachment on Wednesday, if some of your Republican friends express even privately to you at all having to hold their nose through this vote, do they acknowledge that what they're doing is difficult and perhaps wrong? And if so, why are they doing it? It's sort of the existential question of our time. What are Republicans scared of?
You know, I think that they are scared of Donald Trump. They're scared of some parts of their base. But what I think they are missing, and I want to get back to Iowa because except for my constitutional duty, I would be sitting there right there with you right now. What I see at our events are more and more people coming up saying, I have been a Republican my whole life. I'm changing parties. I'm caucusing for you. I just had the mayor, the Republican mayor of Indianola, Iowa, switch parties to caucus for me. I have two former Republican legislators from the state of Iowa who are caucusing for me. Andy McKean, who is a Republican legislator his whole time, is still in the legislature, has endorsed me because he changed parties back in the spring. This is not just one state. You're seeing what happened in the winning race in Kentucky and what just happened in Louisiana, where we reelected a Democratic governor. This is a decency check, a patriotism check. And while my Republican colleagues may be afraid of their base, there are people out there right now in the states that have had it. They may not agree with everything that's said on the Democratic debate stage. I don't agree with everything that's said on that debate stage. But what they are looking for is a candidate who's going to unite the country and bring decency back. And that is my pitch from the very beginning when I announced in the middle of the blizzard. And a lot of people didn't think I'd get through that announcement, much less now. And when you look at that poll you just put up on the screen, I am literally just a few points behind some of the people that you devote a lot of airtime to on your show. And last week, I was ahead of a few of them. So I think you should be looking at our campaign tonight if you want to see surgency and if you want to see organization. We've got this incredible grassroots effort all over the state, and we're headed to New Hampshire tonight.
That's what we were just saying to the AP's Jonathan Lemire off camera, who has a question for you now. Jonathan.
Well, Senator, you just mentioned, of course, you wish you could be here in Iowa. So let me talk to you about what you need to see tonight from your campaign. You say you have momentum. You say the sort of the insurgent candidate. What place do you need to see to make yourself viable? Is there any scenario where you do not go on to New Hampshire and beyond?
There's no scenario where I don't go on. I was just endorsed by every single newspaper in New Hampshire, including the union leader that's endorsed candidates have endorsed me. We have half of the top leadership in the House in New Hampshire have endorsed me. We have this incredible operation. So we're leaving on that plane tonight, late at night, going to New Hampshire. But I think I'm going to do well in Iowa. I don't put numbers on it. You guys can be the pundits. But the fact that we are in the top 5 when we've had 25 candidates, and I am the one that has been able to keep going and build the surge, punching above my weight. When you look at the finances of so many of my other opponents, I'd say we've got a good story already.
You know, our brazen pundit prediction for tonight, Senator, is we have absolutely no idea what is going to happen. So good luck tonight.
Thank you.
By the way,
Iowa.
I don't think she's mentioned it enough. If not for her constitutional duty, she'd be sitting right here with us. Senator Amy Klobuchar.
By the way, Casey, thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.